The camera angle is wrong. That's the first thing rescuers notice when they finally recover the GoPro from the riverbed, 3 years after Andrew Hartley vanished. The lens isn't pointed forward like you'd expect from a kayaker navigating whitewater. It's tilted up, filming the sky, or maybe something else. The footage runs for 11 minutes and 42 seconds. For the first 9 minutes, it's exactly what you'd expect. Churning water, flashes of green forest canopy, the rhythmic splash of paddle strokes. Then, the audio changes. Hartley stops paddling. The camera goes still, and for 2 minutes and 42 seconds, he films something in absolute silence. When the memory card is analyzed, forensic experts find something that makes the case file heavier than it should be. The metadata shows the clip was uploaded to a cloud server at 9:47 p.m., 6 hours after Hartley's estimated time of death, and from a location 17 miles downstream from where his kayak was eventually found. But here's what keeps investigators awake. The video wasn't uploaded by Hartley. The device was in airplane mode when he entered the water that morning. It had no cellular connection, no Wi-Fi signal. The river corridor he chose is one of the most remote stretches in the Pacific Northwest, a place where even satellite phones struggle. So how did the footage upload? And why did Hartley stop paddling to film the sky? Before we go further, if mysteries like this keep you up at night, hit that subscribe button, because this story only gets stranger from here. Andrew Hartley was the kind of person who made solitude look like freedom. At 31, he worked as a freelance cartographer, a job that let him chase rivers the way some people chase paychecks. His apartment in Bellingham, Washington was sparse, just maps, climbing gear, and a growing collection of external hard drives labeled by year and river name. Friends described him as methodical, even obsessive about documentation. Every trip was logged, every route was studied, every potential hazard was researched weeks in advance. He didn't take risks lightly, which made his disappearance all the more confusing. The people who knew him best said the same thing. If anyone could handle that river, it was Andrew. In April 2011, Hartley told his roommate he was heading to the Nooksack River for a 3-day solo kayaking trip. It was early in the season, snowmelt was heavy, and the water was fast but manageable for someone with his experience. He'd paddled that stretch a dozen times before, knew every rapid, every eddy, every place where the current got tricky. He left on a Thursday morning with his usual gear, a dry bag, emergency beacon, two-way radio, and his GoPro Hero mounted just above his spray skirt on a custom bracket he'd designed himself. He planned to return Sunday evening. His roommate didn't think twice about it. When Monday came and went with no word, that's when concern turned to alarm. The search began on Tuesday morning. Helicopters swept the river corridor, their rotors echoing off canyon walls. Dive teams checked the deeper pools where bodies sometimes lodged. Volunteers combed the banks, looking for gear, for footprints, for any sign that Hartley had made it ashore. By Thursday, they found his kayak, lodged against a massive root ball near mile marker 41, hull intact, spray skirt still attached and sealed. Inside the cockpit, everything was in place. His paddle secured by the clips, his dry bag cinched tight, even his emergency beacon, which had never been activated. The only thing missing was Hartley and the GoPro. For weeks, the case followed a grimly predictable pattern. Search dogs tracked his scent to a gravel bar 2 miles downstream, then lost it at the water's edge. A few pieces of gear turned up scattered along the banks. A water bottle here, a carabiner there, a plastic map case wedged between rocks. But nothing that explained what happened. No signs of injury, no evidence of struggle. The working theory was straightforward. He'd capsized in a rapid, been separated from his kayak despite the spray skirt, and drowned. The river had simply taken him the way it had taken others before. It happens. The Nooksack has claimed kayakers with decades of experience. Cold water, strong current, bad luck. But without a body, the case stayed open. And without the GoPro, there was no footage to reconstruct his final hours. Then, in September 2014, 3 years, 5 months, and 11 days after Hartley vanished, a geology student conducting sediment surveys discovered the camera wedged between two boulders in a section of river nearly 20 miles downstream from where the kayak had been found. The casing was cracked, the lens was fogged with condensation, the mounting bracket had been snapped clean off. But when the student pulled the memory card and checked it on his laptop back at camp that evening, he found something impossible. The last file was dated April 14th, 2011, the day Hartley disappeared. And according to the metadata embedded in the file, it had been uploaded to Hartley's cloud storage account that same evening, hours after search and rescue estimated he'd gone under. The student called the sheriff's office immediately. By morning, the footage was in the hands of investigators who thought they'd already closed this chapter. The video opens at 11:14 a.m., according to the timestamp burned into the corner of the frame. Hartley's breathing is audible over the rush of water, steady, controlled, the rhythm of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. The camera captures exactly what you'd expect. The bow of the kayak cutting through frothy whitewater, trees blurring past on both sides, the occasional glimpse of his paddle entering the frame as he corrects his line through a technical section. The river here is fast but predictable, a series of Class 2 rapids that require attention but not panic. The kind of water that experienced paddlers handle on autopilot. For the first 4 minutes, nothing seems wrong. Nothing at all. Then, at the 4:22 mark, the audio shifts subtly. Hartley's paddle strokes slow. The rhythm breaks. The camera angle dips slightly as he leans forward, scanning the water ahead with more focus than the river conditions warrant. He mutters something under his breath. Investigators enhance the audio 3 times before they can make it out clearly. That's not right. His tone isn't fearful. It's confused, curious, like he's spotted something out of place but can't quite identify what he's looking at. He paddles forward, slower now, the camera wobbling as he adjusts his position in the cockpit. The river bends left around a moss-covered outcropping. The trees thicken overhead, creating a tunnel of shadow. And then, for just a moment, the camera catches something on the right bank. It looks like a structure of some kind. Weathered wood, half collapsed, disappearing into the dense undergrowth about 30 feet from the water's edge. It's difficult to make out details. The camera is moving, the angle is wrong, and the shadows beneath the canopy are deep, but it's clearly man-made. Square corners, deliberate construction, not a natural formation. Hartley stops paddling entirely. The kayak drifts with the current, rotating slowly as the water pushes against the hull. He turns his head, and the camera swings with him, losing focus as the lens tries to adjust to the sudden shift from bright water to dark forest. When the image clears again, the structure is gone, swallowed by distance and trees and the curve of the river. Hartley exhales, long, slow, the kind of breath that suggests he's processing something unexpected. Then he starts paddling again, his strokes more purposeful now. For the next 3 minutes, everything returns to normal. He navigates 2 more rapids with practiced efficiency. He sings under his breath, something folkish and off-key that his roommate later identifies as a Gordon Lightfoot song. The sun breaks through the clouds for a moment, dappling the water with coins of light. It's peaceful. It's routine. It's exactly what this trip was supposed to be. But at the 7:51 mark, something changes again. The audio picks up a new sound beneath the river's constant roar. It's faint at first, a low, rhythmic thumping, almost mechanical in its regularity. Not natural. Hartley stops paddling immediately. His breathing quickens, becomes shallower. The thumping grows louder, more distinct, pulsing through the audio track like a distant heartbeat. And then, abruptly, it stops. The silence that follows is heavier than it should be, as if something has been subtracted from the soundscape rather than simply going quiet. Even the river seems muted. Hartley whispers, barely audible, "What the hell was that?" No one answers. He sits there, motionless in the current, for another 20 seconds. The camera captures his hands gripping the paddle, knuckles white, fingers tense. Then he starts paddling again, faster this time, his strokes more urgent, less controlled. The camera bounces with each movement, making the footage harder to watch. He's moving downstream with purpose now, as if trying to put distance between himself and whatever produced that sound. At the 9-minute mark, Hartley rounds a tight bend, and the river opens suddenly into a wide, slow pool. He stops paddling. The kayak glides forward, momentum carrying him into the center of the stillness. The water here is glass smooth, reflecting the sky like a mirror, and that's when he tilts the camera up, away from the water, away from the banks, up toward the sky. The frame fills with gray clouds and the tips of towering pines, and for the next 2 minutes and 42 seconds, Andrew Hartley films nothing but sky. He doesn't speak. He doesn't move. The camera doesn't waver. He just watches. And whatever he saw, or thought he saw, in those final moments, he never had the chance to explain. The investigators watch the final 2 minutes and 42 seconds on loop, frame by frame, pixel by pixel. They adjust brightness, contrast, saturation. They're looking for something, anything, that might explain why Hartley stopped, why he pointed the camera skyward, why he went completely silent. But the footage reveals almost nothing. Just sky. Just clouds moving slowly from west to east. Just the faint sway of treetops at the edges of the frame. No birds crossing the shot. No helicopters. No drones. No aircraft of any kind. The audio is even more frustrating. The river's background hum continues at a steady level, but there's no wind, no rustling leaves, no sound of Hartley's breathing anymore. It's as if he's holding his breath for 2 full minutes, or as if the camera is no longer attached to him at all. Forensic audio specialists isolate the background noise and run it through filtering software designed to detect frequencies outside the normal range of human hearing. They're looking for ultrasound, radio interference, anything that might have caught Hartley's attention. They find something. At the 10:03 mark, there's a brief spike, a low-frequency pulse, barely perceptible even with enhancement, sitting just below 20 hertz at infrasound, the kind of sound that exists below the threshold of conscious hearing but can still affect the human body. It lasts for exactly 3 seconds, then vanishes completely. Infrasound can make people feel uneasy, anxious, even terrified, without knowing why. It's produced by natural phenomena, earthquakes, avalanches, strong winds moving over certain landscapes, but it can also be produced by man-made sources. Industrial equipment, large engines running at specific RPMs, certain architectural structures under specific conditions. The question is, what was generating infrasound in the middle of a remote river corridor where nothing industrial should exist? The investigation expands beyond the footage itself. Geologists are consulted. They pull historical records for the area, checking for any documented seismic activity, landslides, or unusual geological formations that might produce such a frequency naturally. They find nothing. The area has no history of earthquakes, no recorded landslides, no caves or canyon formations that might create acoustic anomalies. Environmental engineers check permit records for any logging or construction activity in the region during April 2011. They find nothing there either. The river corridor is part of a protected wilderness zone, designated roadless area. No permits were issued for that year. No equipment was supposed to be operating anywhere within 20 miles. Whatever produced that sound, it wasn't supposed to be there at all. Then, a retired search and rescue volunteer comes forward after reading about the case in a regional newspaper. His name is kept out of official reports at his request, but his testimony is recorded in supplementary case notes that remain part of the file. He was part of the original search effort in 2011, working with a team that combed the West Bank during the first week. On the second day of the search, His team was working through dense forest about 15 miles downstream from where Hartley's kayak was eventually found. They came across a clearing, small, overgrown, barely noticeable unless you were actively looking for it. In the center of the clearing were the remains of a structure. Old, rotting, wooden. The kind of decay that suggested decades, not years. It looked like some kind of outbuilding or storage facility, though the purpose wasn't immediately clear. But here's what stuck with him, what he still remembers vividly 13 years later. There were no trails leading to it, no roads, no evidence of how anyone might have brought building materials that deep into the forest, that far from any access point. His team photographed the structure, logged the GPS coordinates in their search grid, and moved on. They were looking for a missing kayaker, not investigating abandoned buildings. When he tries to pull up the photos now from the search archive, the files are missing. Digital corruption, according to the records manager. The GPS coordinates are still listed in the grid documentation, but when current investigators return to the location with those exact coordinates, they find nothing. Just trees. Just undergrowth. Just forest that looks like it hasn't been disturbed in generations. No clearing, no structure, no evidence that anything was ever built there. It's as if the building he photographed simply vanished or never existed at all. But he knows what he saw. And he remembers the feeling he had standing in that clearing, looking at those rotting walls. The feeling that he was somewhere he shouldn't be. That something was watching him from the trees. The metadata is where the case fractures completely, where logic breaks down and investigators start questioning their own tools. According to the file properties embedded in the video, the 11-minute clip was uploaded to Hartley's cloud storage account at precisely 9:47 p.m. on April 14, 2011, the same day he disappeared. The upload location is listed as a set of GPS coordinates that place the device 17 miles downstream from where the kayak was found, and 8 miles downstream from where the GoPro itself was eventually recovered 3 years later. The upload speed, calculated from the file size and the timestamp differential, suggests a broadband connection, not cellular, not satellite. Broadband. The kind of connection you'd get from a cable modem or fiber optic line. In the middle of a wilderness area with no infrastructure, no power lines, no fiber optic cables, at least none that appear on any map. Tech forensics specialists from the FBI's Digital Crimes Unit are brought in to make sense of it. They examine the GoPro's internal logs, checking for evidence of tampering, corruption, or post-recovery modification. The device was in airplane mode when Hartley left that Thursday morning, confirmed by both the settings screen his roommate saw before he left and the lack of any prior cloud activity during the trip. The camera had been syncing footage to Hartley's account automatically before the trip, but once airplane mode was activated, all wireless communication should have been disabled. For the video to have uploaded, someone or something would have had to physically access the device, take it out of airplane mode, connect it to a network with sufficient bandwidth, and initiate the transfer. But the device's internal log shows no record of settings changes after 10:47 a.m., roughly the time the video ends. It's as if the upload happened without the device's knowledge, bypassing its own operating system entirely. One investigator proposes a theory that seems rational on the surface. Maybe the GoPro was found by someone else, shortly after Hartley disappeared. A hiker, a fisherman, someone passing through who stumbled on the camera lodged between rocks, took it home out of curiosity, charged it, and uploaded the footage after watching it, either out of concern or simple nosiness. It's plausible. People find lost items in the wilderness all the time, except the timeline doesn't work. The upload happened the same day Hartley vanished, before anyone knew he was missing, before the search began, before anyone had reason to be looking for his gear, or even knew a kayaker was overdue. And if someone found the camera that quickly, within hours of it entering the water, why didn't they report it? Why didn't they come forward during the massive search effort that dominated local news for weeks? Why upload the footage to someone else's private cloud account and then vanish? Another detail emerges during the digital forensics examination. Hartley's cloud account shows login activity from an unrecognized IP address at 9:46 p.m., exactly 1 minute before the video file began its upload. The login was successful, meaning whoever or whatever accessed the account had Hartley's credentials. The IP address is traced back through multiple routing layers to a server cluster in rural Oregon, over 300 miles south of the Nooksack River. But when federal authorities contact the company that operated the server cluster, they hit an impossible wall. According to the company's records, that specific server was decommissioned in late 2009, 18 months before Hartley's disappearance. It shouldn't have been online. It shouldn't have had power. It shouldn't have been routing traffic of any kind. The company has no explanation. Their techs verify the dates. The server was physically dismantled and sold for parts. Yet somehow, impossibly, it logged Hartley's credentials, maintained a connection long enough to upload an 11-minute video file, and then went dark again. Investigators returned to the footage one more time, examining it with fresh eyes and deeper paranoia. They focus on the final seconds, the last frames before the video cuts abruptly to black. The camera is still pointed at the sky. The clouds are moving slowly, left to right, normal atmospheric motion. And then, just before the footage ends, something enters the frame. It's fast, less than half a second, barely visible without frame-by-frame analysis. A shape, dark and angular, moving across the upper right corner before disappearing beyond the edge of the frame. Image enhancement reveals almost nothing useful. It's too blurred, too brief, the camera's compression algorithm struggling with the sudden motion. But it's clearly not a bird. The motion is too linear, too deliberate, too controlled. Some investigators think it's a tree branch swaying into the shot as Hartley's kayak drifts. Others aren't convinced. One investigator, a former Navy aviation specialist, writes in his case notes, "Movement profile consistent with rotor blade, approx 15 to 20 feet in length." He doesn't elaborate further. The observation is never officially followed up. By late 2015, after 4 years of dead ends and impossible questions, the case is effectively cold. But Andrew Hartley isn't the only one. That realization comes in 2017, when a graduate researcher at the University of Washington compiling statistical data on missing persons in the Pacific Northwest notices something odd in the numbers. Over a span of 20 years, from 1995 to 2015, 11 people vanished in remote areas within a 100-mile radius of where Hartley disappeared. On the surface, there's nothing unusual about that. People go missing in wilderness areas. It's tragic, but statistically normal. What catches the researchers' attention is the profile. All 11 were experienced outdoorsmen, not casual hikers, but people with years of backcountry experience. All of them were last seen near rivers or deep forest corridors, areas with limited cell coverage and no road access. And in 4 of the 11 cases, personal electronics were recovered with similar anomalies. Uploads that shouldn't have happened, metadata that didn't match the physical evidence, timestamps that defied logic and geography. In 2003, a hiker named Rebecca Lorne disappeared in the Cascade foothills during a solo backpacking trip. She was 52, a retired park ranger with 30 years of wilderness experience. Her phone was found 2 years later by hunters, 7 miles from her last known location, buried under leaf litter near a stream. The last photo on the device was a blurry image of tree canopy, taken at dusk. Nothing unusual, except that photo had been uploaded to her email account 4 hours after search and rescue estimated she'd gone missing, sent from her own address to her daughter with no subject line and no message. Just the image. When her daughter received it, she assumed her mother had scheduled the email before losing signal. But the phone's logs showed no scheduled send. The email was sent in real time, from a location with no cell towers within 15 miles. In 2008, a climber named Marcus Tate vanished near Mount Baker while attempting a winter ascent. He was 41, an experienced mountaineer who'd summited peaks across 3 continents. His helmet-mounted camera was recovered by hunters the following spring, found in a ravine miles from any established climbing route. The footage ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as Tate was setting up camp for the evening. Everything looked normal. He was talking about his plans for the next day's climb, his voice calm and measured. Then, the video cut to black. But the file showed a login from his social media account that same evening, 3 hours after the video ended, posting the footage with the caption, "Last Light." The post received dozens of comments from concerned friends before anyone realized Tate was missing. His family confirmed he never used social media, found it pointless. He didn't even know his account password. His wife had set it up years earlier and he'd never logged in. The pattern is subtle, easy to miss unless you're specifically looking for it, but once you see it, it's difficult to ignore. Each case shares the same core elements: a remote location far from infrastructure, an experienced individual who shouldn't have made basic mistakes, a sudden disappearance with no clear cause, and electronics that behave in ways that violate basic principles of technology and physics. No bodies are ever found, despite extensive searches. No clear cause of death is ever established. And in every case where footage or photos exist, there is a moment, captured on camera or described in final communications, where the person stops, goes silent, and seems to notice something just out of frame, something they can't quite explain but that clearly commands their complete attention. Investigators quietly revisit the Hartley case with this new context, pulling the file from the cold storage. They re-examine the strange structure he saw on the riverbank, the infrasound captured in the audio, the impossible upload, the server that shouldn't have been online. They compare notes with investigators from the other cases, looking for connections. Patterns emerge that suggest something more organized than random tragedy. The infrasound, for example, appears in 3 other recovered recordings, always brief, never longer than 5 seconds, always in the same frequency range between 18 to 20 hertz. The structures, too. At least 2 other missing persons were last seen near areas where old, unexplained buildings were reported by search teams, buildings that, like the one in Hartley's case, couldn't be relocated when investigators returned with better equipment and more precise coordinates. One theory begins to circulate in off-the-record conversations, though it's never officially documented in case files. It involves Cold War-era infrastructure, hidden research sites, forgotten installations, places built during the decades when paranoia and secrecy led to projects that were never fully decommissioned or even properly documented. The Pacific Northwest was home to dozens of such sites during the 1950s through 1980s. Some were logged in declassified documents, some weren't. And some, according to researchers who've studied Cold War infrastructure, were specifically designed to be invisible, self-contained, able to operate for decades without human intervention. Automated monitoring stations, remote research facilities, places that were supposed to be shut down when the Cold War ended but might have simply been forgotten, their budgets buried in classified ledgers, still running their programmed routines with no one watching. What if some of them were still active, still drawing power from underground sources, still collecting data from any electronic device that wandered within range? What if people like Hartley stumbled onto them, triggered proximity sensors, became data points in experiments that no one remembered authorizing? It's speculative. It's unsettling. It relies on assumptions about government incompetence and bureaucratic neglect that seem almost too convenient. And it's never proven, but it offers an explanation, however incomplete, for the things that don't fit the natural narrative. The uploads could be automatic data collection, old systems designed to harvest information from any device that came within range, using broadcast methods that modern electronics still respond to. The infrasound could be failing machinery, still cycling through diagnostic routines decades after anyone stopped listening. The structures could be the visible edges of something much larger, buried beneath the forest floor or hidden in canyon walls. It's a theory built on shadows and gaps in the historical record, but in a case with no good answers, even shadows start to look like evidence. In 2019, an anonymous tip leads investigators to a section of forest 40 miles north of where Hartley disappeared, deep in roadless wilderness that hasn't seen official human activity in decades. The coordinates arrive via an encrypted email sent to the Seattle FBI field office from an IP address that bounces through 6 countries before terminating at a server in Iceland. The message contains only coordinates and a single sentence. Look under the moss. The FBI doesn't typically chase anonymous tips for cold missing persons cases, but something about the precision of the coordinates and the encrypted delivery suggests the sender has specific knowledge. A team finally reaches the site after a 2-day hike, following GPS through terrain that shows no signs of trails. When they arrive, they find concrete foundations, large, rectangular, overgrown with moss and ferns, so thick it's almost invisible from 10 feet away. The structures are old, 1960s or 70s, judging by the concrete composition and rebar type. There are no markings, no identification numbers, no signs explaining what stood here or who built it. Just foundations disappearing into the earth, but buried beneath the undergrowth, exposed only when they start documenting the site, they find something else. A bundle of fiber optic cables, still intact, running underground in a direction that leads deeper into the wilderness. The cables are encased in military-grade protective housing, the kind designed to last decades without maintenance. One of the techs has the presence of mind to bring a signal detector. The cables are live. Data is moving through them at broadband speeds, traveling in both directions. The discovery triggers a classified investigation that spreads across 3 federal agencies. No one can determine where the cables lead, who installed them, or what they're transmitting. Records requests disappear into bureaucratic black holes. The few responses that come back cite national security exemptions. Within 6 months, the site is quietly fenced off, marked as hazardous terrain, and removed from public maps. The investigation into Hartley's disappearance remains officially cold. The discovery doesn't reopen Hartley's case in any formal sense, but it adds weight to the theory that something artificial exists in these forests, something old and automated, still functioning according to programming that no one alive remembers writing. Hartley's final video is released to the public in 2021, 10 years after his disappearance, as part of a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a documentary filmmaker. The footage is edited. Certain sections are redacted with black frames for investigative and privacy reasons that are never fully explained, but the core remains intact. The internet does what the internet does best. Analysts and amateur sleuths download the file, dissect it frame by frame, run it through every enhancement algorithm available. Some claim they see shapes in the sky during those final 2 minutes, geometric patterns in the clouds that suggest artificial structures. Others insist the audio contains hidden messages when played at different speeds or run through spectral analysis. Most see only what's clearly there: clouds, trees, silence, and a man who stopped paddling to look up. But everyone who watches it agrees on one fundamental thing. Andrew Hartley saw something, and whatever it was, it made him, an experienced kayaker who understood river dangers intimately, stop everything, put down his paddle in moving water, and point his camera at the sky. Not at the water that could drown him, not at the forest where he might find help, at the sky as if the danger wasn't in the river at all, as if it was somewhere above him, beyond the canopy, watching, recording, waiting for him to notice. His body has never been found, despite searches that extended for months and covered over 100 miles of river corridor. The upload remains unexplained by any conventional understanding of technology or geography, and deep in the Nooksack River corridor, where the trees grow thick enough to block satellite signals and the water runs cold enough to kill in minutes, There are still places where your phone might suddenly show signal bars that shouldn't exist, where footage might upload to cloud accounts you didn't authorize, where the wilderness is not as empty as the maps suggest. Andrew Hartley paddled into one of those places on a Thursday morning in April, expecting 3 days of solitude and scenery. And whatever he found there, whatever found him, is still out there, still running its programmed routines, still waiting for the next person to drift too close, to notice something at the edge of their vision, to look up and finally understand what he saw in those last, silent moments before the camera went dark and the river carried him away. The GoPro sits in an evidence locker now, tagged and cataloged, its memory card removed. But sometimes, late at night, techs swear they can hear something coming from the storage room. A low hum, a pulse, like something waiting to transmit. They check the device. It's powered off, battery removed. But the feeling remains. The sense that somewhere in the digital ether, something is still watching that footage, still analyzing what Hartley saw, still waiting for the next upload from the deep places where the maps end and the old systems still run, forgotten by everyone except the wilderness that keeps their secrets.